My function as President of the Council, I now give the floor to the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, at the outset, I would like to congratulate you on assuming the presidency of the Security Council for this month, wishing you and your team every success. I also wish to thank your predecessor, the Permanent Representative of Denmark, and her team for their effective management of the Council's work during the past month. I extend my thanks for your prompt response to the request to convene this emergency session. Gratitude is also due to the distinguished delegations of brotherly Algeria and Somalia and the member states of the Arab Group in New York for their support of the Syrian Arab Republic request to hold this meeting. I also thank Mr. Jean-Pierre Lacroix, the Under-Secretary General for Peacekeeping Operations, and Mr. Khiari, the Assistant Secretary General, for their briefings. I also welcome Ms. Liwa Anita Asma, head of UNDOF, with us in this session today, and I thank her and her team for their efforts to uphold UNDOF's mandate. Mr. President, a majority of UN member states, including within this Council, have emphasized over the past 4 months the need to support Syria and the Syrian people during this sensitive phase of their present and future. We have all witnessed the international consensus on the necessity of uniting efforts to end the suffering of the Syrian people, which is a protracted suffering, and to support Syria's stability, security, sovereignty, and territorial integrity, as this would positively reflect on the stability of the region and the security and well-being of its peoples. In parallel with those positive and constructive declarations and initiatives undertaken by member states, international organizations, and political groups to support Syria and its people, as we witnessed during the Arab Summit hosted by Cairo, the meeting of the OIC's foreign ministers in Jeddah, the conferences of Aqaba, Riyadh, Paris, the Brussels Donors Conference, and other international fora held in Davos and Munich. So in parallel with all this, the Israeli occupying authorities have persisted in their aggressive actions, which constitute a challenge to these international efforts and aim at threatening the unity and integrity of the Syrian territory, undermining the efforts of the Syrian government, and imposing a new reality that contradicts the hope and aspirations of the Syrians to live in their homeland in safety and peace. Mr. President, the Israeli occupying authorities have escalated their aggression against the sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity of the Syrian Arab Republic, posing a serious threat to international peace and security and a grave violation of international law, of the UN Charter and the relevant resolutions, as well as of the 1974 Disengagement Agreement. Since last December, the occupation forces have launched hundreds of airstrikes against my country, the latest of which was launched on the 3rd of April at dawn on Thursday, and within 30 minutes, several airstrikes were launched against 5 different areas across the country. These attacks resulted in the near-total destruction of the Hama military airport, the injury of dozens of civilians and military personnel, and the destruction and extensive damage to other military and civilian facilities in the governorates of Homs and Damascus. Concurrently with this aggression, units of the Israeli occupation forces penetrated the Daraa countryside and bombed the Al-Jubayliyah dam forest area west of Daraa, killing 9 civilians and wounding others. This aggression was preceded by another attack on the town of Al-Quwaya in the Daraa countryside, which resulted in the death of 7 civilians. The latest report of the Secretary General concerning the UNDOF force highlighted some aspects of the Israeli aggressions against Syria. The report clearly indicated the incursion of the Israeli occupation forces into the buffer zone, the significant alteration of the situation therein, and the impact of the forces' operations since the 8th of December, in violation of the relevant Security Council resolutions. Moreover, the report recorded the complaints of our people in that area due to the Israeli occupation army preventing farmers from accessing their agricultural lands and sources of livelihood and damaging them, arresting Syrian citizens, stealing their livestock, destroying roads, disrupting electricity, water, and internet services, and occupying buildings belonging to the Quneitra governorate and damaging them. Israeli practices in the territories it recently infiltrated beyond the buffer zone are not limited to the above. They have also extended to threatening the water security of Syria and neighboring countries by seizing control of water resources in southern Syria, diverting river flows and water springs in Mount Hermon and the southern water resources. This will directly endanger Syria's water and food security. On the other hand, the Israeli occupation entity continues its provocative practices against Syria and its people by establishing military outposts and bases for its forces and promoting tourist tours for settlers in the areas it has invaded. This exposes the falsity of the occupation entity's claims that its incursion is temporary and limited. It clearly reveals its aggressive and expansionist intentions and its contempt for the UN Charter, the foundation of international law, and relevant Security Council and General Assembly resolutions. Mr. President, Syria, while reaffirming the content of its 4 most recent related letters, most recently the complaint submitted to Your Excellency, the President of the Security Council, and His Excellency, the Secretary General, on the 7th of this month, which will be issued as document S/2025/216, renews its strongest condemnation of the blatant Israeli attacks and of the provocative statements by Israeli officials, calling for what they termed the disarmament of the Syrian state in the southern provinces, and for promoting false claims about protecting certain components of the Syrian national society pretending to protect them. Syria, while expressing its gratitude to the states that have stood by its side and clearly condemned the Israeli attacks and called for their cessation, calls on the Security Council to condemn these aggressions and to take an immediate and decisive action to compel Israel to cease its ongoing aggression against Syrian territory, to withdraw immediately and unconditionally from all Syrian lands, to fully comply with the 1974 disengagement agreement, to respect the mandates of UNDOF and UNSO, and to implement the relevant Security Council resolutions, particularly resolutions 242, 338, and 497, to end the Israeli occupation of the occupied Syrian Golan and the grave threat it poses to Syria's unity, sovereignty, and security. While reaffirming its inalienable right to extend its sovereignty over all its territories, Syria rejects any Israeli attempts to interfere in its internal affairs, destabilize its security and stability, or impose a new occupation reality. Syria affirms its commitment to the UN Charter, the provisions of international law, and international legitimacy resolutions as the basis for achieving stability and peace in the region. I cannot fail to commend the efforts of the peacekeepers among UNSO and UNDOF personnel and their leadership in New York and on the field, and to commend their determination and commitment to demonstrate their willingness to fulfill their mandate despite the significant challenges they face as a result of the practices of the occupation forces, including restrictions imposed on their freedom of movement. Syria reaffirms its willingness to spread its forces along the separation lines and to commit to the disengagement agreement. In conclusion, Mr. President, with every day that the Security Council delays upholding its responsibilities in maintaining international peace and security and ending the ongoing Israeli aggression against my country, the potential for instability increases, and the threat posed by this aggression to the region and to my country, Syria, and all the peoples of the region grows. Attempts to impose solutions by force and to give precedence to the law of force over the force of law are doomed to failure, not to mention that they do not serve regional stability and they contradict the strenuous efforts being made to consolidate the values and culture of peace in the region and advance it towards prosperity and development. Thank you, President.
I thank the representative